When James Callahan first saw the sneers on his brothers' faces, he realized that bloodkin could wound sharper than bullets. He had not expected congratulations when word spread through Tucson that he had taken not one, but two Apache women as his wives. The frontier was harsh enough on a man who worked the land. To ally himself openly with the people most settlers feared was to invite ridicule, suspicion, even hatred. Yet James stood tall under the weight of their scorn, for he had come to understand something his family could not: the desert did not bend to pride, nor to prejudice. It only bowed to those who respected it. The first wife was Aiyana, the wounded woman who had arrived months earlier, who had bought his ranch for $1 and, by dawn, delivered him into the trust of her tribe. What began as uneasy coexistence had grown into a bond of necessity and then, unexpectedly, into affection. Aiyana was not one to speak often, but her silence carried the strength of mountains. She had healed under his roof, yet it was James who found himself changed by her presence. The second was Nayeli, younger than Aiyana but fierce in spirit. Where Aiyana's calm could tame a storm, Nayeli was the storm itself. She was the keeper of her people's horses, a gift passed down through her family. Her touch could settle the wildest stallion, and her knowledge of breeding and training was unmatched across the desert plains. James had not intended to marry at all, much less to join his fate with two women who carried the weight of an entire nation's grief and resilience. But marriage in the desert was not what marriage had been back in Kentucky or Missouri. It was less about paper and priest, more about survival, respect, and the promises made beneath the open sky. When he brought Aiyana and Nayeli into town for supplies, the whispers started. "He's gone savage," one man muttered outside the general store. "What kind of white man takes squaws for wives?" another spat. His own brother Thomas, who had come west to try his hand at prospecting, laughed openly in his face. "You've lost your mind, James," Thomas said one evening as they stood near the saloon. "Two Apache women? You'll be run out before long. Folks will never accept you." James met his brother's mockery with steady eyes. "I don't ask for their acceptance. The land accepts me. That's enough." Thomas shook his head. "You've traded your kin for savages. When trouble comes, don't expect family to stand with you." James could have argued. He could have shouted. But instead, he let the silence answer for him, the way Aiyana had taught him. What his family and neighbors did not know, and what James never bothered to correct, was that through his union with Aiyana and Nayeli, he had become part of something far greater than their gossip. For Nayeli was not merely a woman of the tribe. She was the keeper of 200 horses, grazing in hidden valleys known only to her people. 200 horses in Arizona territory were worth more than most men's fortunes. They were not just wealth, they were freedom, mobility, and power. Soldiers prized them, traders coveted them, outlaws would kill for them. Yet they remained under Apache control, guarded with secrecy and skill. James first saw the herd one dusky evening when Nayeli led him beyond the ridges that framed his ranch. The desert stretched wide, its silence broken only by the soft thunder of hooves. Then, cresting a hill, James froze at the sight, wave after wave of horses, their coats gleaming in the fading sun, blacks, chestnuts, paints, and palominos, each more magnificent than the last. They moved like a single living river, directed by Nayeli's voice, her whistle, her hand upon the wind. "They are my family's heart," she told him proudly. "Not cattle, not property. They are our spirit." James understood then why she had agreed to stand beside him as wife. Not for the walls of his home or the fences of his ranch, but because he had treated Aiyana with honor when she was wounded, and because he had shown a willingness to see the land as more than something to carve and claim. He had not merely married two women, he had been woven into a bond of trust that few outsiders would ever know. Back in town, the ridicule grew louder. The Callahans, once respected for their grit, were now whispered about in saloons as fools, weak men led astray by savage beauty. Thomas continued to mock his brother, even betting openly that James would be left penniless and abandoned once the Apache had no more use for him. But James carried a secret smile. For while others saw shame, he knew that in the wide valleys hidden from their eyes grazed wealth enough to change the balance of power in the territory. 200 horses that moved at Nayeli's command, guarded by Aiyana's wisdom. The mockery turned to bitter envy months later when rumors leaked whispers of the Callahan ranch sending trained horses eastward, fetching prices high enough to make merchants take notice. Soldiers, too, began sniffing around, curious as to how one quiet rancher had come to trade animals fit for cavalry use. One evening, Thomas returned, this time not to jeer but to demand. "You're hiding something, James. Don't play me for a fool. Where are you getting those horses?" James only shook his head. "Some truths aren't for you." The bond between him and his wives was not one to be betrayed, not even for blood. Trouble came soon after. Outlaws caught wind of the herd. They rode in under the cover of night, guns ready, greed shining in their eyes. They thought to take what they assumed belonged to one foolish rancher. But they had not reckoned with Aiyana, who read the desert like scripture, nor with Nayeli, whose whistle could summon horses as a bugle summoned soldiers. The herd did not scatter when the outlaws pressed in. Instead, guided by Nayeli, 200 horses thundered in unison, a storm of muscle and hoof that sent the raiders sprawling. Aiyana's tribe, hidden among the rocks, struck swift and silent, leaving the survivors scrambling into the darkness. By dawn, the Callahan ranch stood untouched. The herd remained intact. And James, once mocked as a fool, stood at the heart of a power no one in Tucson could measure. In time, even his family's laughter withered. Thomas no longer mocked him, he avoided him, uneasy in the presence of a brother who had chosen a life beyond the narrow boundaries of blood and prejudice. Others who once sneered now spoke with caution, aware that the man with 2 Apache wives commanded respect backed by the thunder of hooves. James himself never spoke of conquest or victory. When people asked, he only said, "The land gives to those who listen." I only learned to listen. For he knew the truth, his wives were not trophies, nor his possessions. They were his teachers, his partners, his guides. Aiyana gave him patience, the wisdom to see beyond pride. Nayeli gave him fire, the strength to defend what must be defended. And together, they gave him a legacy that no white man's laughter could ever take away. 2 women. 200 horses. And 1 man who chose respect over ridicule. That was the story the desert kept, long after the gossips' voices faded into dust.